What's up, everybody? Welcome to one of the most exciting matches of Pogchamps 3. It is a match between moistcritikal and mr.beast. Let's go ahead and start. So mr.beast started with the white pieces, and moistcritikal was feeling very confident because so far every match in Pogchamps 3 he has won with a 99% accuracy. So he's played very well so far, so he's feeling very confident. So he decides to pre-move the first 5 or so moves up until he castles, and I'll show you the clip, but he's playing as black, and up until this position when black finally castles, moistcritikal has pre-moved. So let's go ahead and see the clip.
Dodge defense by Charlie, and wait a second, has he pre-moved his kingside development? Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
What?
Now, luckily, this did not end up working badly for moistcritikal, but if mr.beast noticed what moistcritikal was doing, maybe he could have tried to take advantage of it. But regardless, we find ourselves in this position. The bishop gets developed with check on a very nice diagonal. We have e6 being played, and now h4. Now, h4 is a sign that mr.beast is going all out. He's playing very aggressively. He wants to push this pawn further, open up the position, potentially sacrifice a piece. And as you'll see, in this position, after this move, the bishop came back, so that supports this pawn push even further. And he wants to open up this king and attack immediately. So mr.beast is playing very aggressively. We have knight to c6 and immediately h5. The knight takes, the bishop takes, but now the queen takes, because what happens is that the knight was stopping this queen from this discovery, and the pawn used to be defending the knight, but now once you push it, the knight is not defended. So after takes, the knight is hanging. And so already it's not looking great. You can maybe try to just retreat the bishop, and the king still might be able to get opened at some point, and maybe you can still attack, but it's not looking great for mr.beast. But then he plays a very cool move, e4, attacking the queen, opening up another file towards the king, and continuing to be very aggressive. And the queen took what seems to be a free pawn. However, this is not a free pawn because it actually traps the queen. Bishop to f3, the queen has no square to go to, and immediately mr.beast is up material. It's such a crazy start of the game because mr.beast, of course, is 100% the underdog. Everyone knew that moistcritikal was going to win, and so here mr.beast is just crushing in material, in positional ideas. He can attack this king a lot easier than black can attack this king, and it's looking very good. He develops his pieces, but it does get tricky for mr.beast because there seems to be a lot of pressure along this d-file with this bishop, this knight, and here after queen to d2, the idea is to send the bishop out here and trade, but black has a lot of chances. You could take immediately, and although that could be nice maybe with the bishop, that will lead to trading some minor pieces, and because you're down material, that's not what you want to do. But you could try to maybe play f4 even, distracting the bishop, and then you could try to take so you're not trading. And this could become very bad. For example, if takes and black or white castles, trying to maybe use this pin, then there's check, and you're going to lose your queen. So it could become very tricky here in this position. There's also ideas maybe of playing e5 using this pin, and I think e5 was indeed the move in the game that was played. We have bishop coming to h6, we have this trade of bishops, and finally black takes. Here the knight jumps to b5, you're simply attacking a pawn, so rook to d7, defending the pawn, and now castles, adding pressure onto this pawn. And the knight moved here, trying to attack here. You could take the pawn here, you don't really have to worry about this. We see king to b1, which is a decent move. You're trying to defend everything and then later take, but it does allow d3. And now f3, which is a horrible move. Not only are you blundering this fork, you're actually blundering checkmate. And so even up material in this position, unfortunately, moistcritikal just managed to attack very convincingly on this d-file. And even with his such limited amount of material, only really these 3 pieces doing anything, these 2 are out of the game, he managed to pressure white so heavily and win this game. So it's quite unfortunate because mr.beast certainly had a chance. But let's go ahead and see what happens in game number 2. So for game 2, moistcritikal has the white pieces, and we have e4 and now e5, knight to c3, the Vienna, and now f5. Kind of doing the Vienna against the Vienna because, of course, Usually after knight f6, you play f4 in the Vienna, and that's why you don't develop this knight to f3, because often you play f4 and later put your knight behind the pawn. But we have f5 here. Now f5, it's not something you should be scared of, because it's a very weakening move. Notice that this diagonal specifically, but also long-term, this diagonal is much more weak, because you don't have a pawn here, and therefore if black ever thinks of castling like this, it's going to be a very weak king, and it makes a lot of tactics possible. So here we have take, we have d5, and already in this position, because of how weak the king is, queen to h5 is just winning. They have to move the king, basically. I mean, if you push this pawn, you can take, and if they take, you win the rook. Even if they go here, attack your queen, you can push, check, they get your queen, but you get another queen and win the rook. So all of these tactics are just so possible because of how weak this king is. So be careful if you're opening up your king, specifically with moves like f5, f6, or if you're playing as white, f3, f4. Be careful that these checks that often are possible are not possible and they're not so dangerous. In the game, however, he doesn't see this queen h5 idea. He plays d4. The knight develops, and again he has queen h5, but he misses it once again. He takes the pawn. Here again there's queen h5, but he misses it once more, and finally he moves his knight away and blocks this queen h5. So if only he looked for checks, and it's very early on in the game, so I don't blame him for not looking for checks. Usually these tactics appear later in the game. However, it's still important to kind of figure out what's going on in the position, and the second that this king becomes weak, start having your mind look for these different checks that might be possible. But in the game, we have takes, and now d4, and the knight finally, again, like I said, blocks the queen. We have bishop to f5 and knight to f3, both players developing, and now knight to b4, trying to maybe go for a quick attack, but the truth is, of course, you can simply take this pawn and defend, and after queen coming to d7, the idea is to try to maybe castle and add more pressure along this d-file. We have a3, and here, for some reason, black took the pawn on c2. I guess he was looking at queen takes and you win the queen, but of course, knight can simply take. This is not a king, so this is not a pin. So, you know, if takes, then you can gladly take, and then take, and everything's fine here. In the game, after takes, we first have castles. You do have to be careful here. Of course, if you move your king away, you lose the knight, and if you block with the knight, that's another bad move, because now there's c5, for example, using this pin, and so there were some chances for black to try to win some material back, but bishop to d2, just a beautiful move, developing a piece, and at the same time blocking the check and still being able to defend this knight on c2. We have h5, the knight coming to g5, aggressive move. You could also, in this position, very easily develop your bishop, get your rooks in the center of the board, and I mean, this pawn is just gonna have a very nice continuation here, just getting it to a queen, but also this, it's an aggressive move, and it also kind of sets up that little trap where if black ever tries to take this pawn, there's that forking idea also with these two squares. So there could be some tactics in the future. Here we have e6 though, the rook comes, attack the pawn, and now bishop to b4, attacking the rook moves, and we have this trade of bishops, the other bishop comes out, he does give away this pawn, but the king can simply move away, the rook comes to f1, trying to, well, first of all, there's the threat of checkmate, and secondarily, he's just trying to pave a path for this pawn, maybe with, supporting it with a rook potentially. Here we have rook to g3 check, which of course you can't do the checkmate because you're in check, but you can just take the rook, and you're obviously winning. You're winning even if you don't take it, and MoistCr1tikal doesn't take it. He moves the knight back. Of course, he's still winning, but that would have been an opportunity to end the game a bit quicker. We have e7, the knight coming to f6, rook to e6. There was an opportunity here, very simply, bishop to f7, hitting the rook, guarding the square, threatening to just promote next move, and that would have ended the game. But of course, here everything is winning. You're up so much material. Here, he had a second opportunity to take the rook. This time he did take it. He took the pawn here. He took the knight. I mean, here actually black resigned, but of course, if you take, then white will be able to promote. And if you don't take, then you're just going to lose your rook. So the game ends here. So it's very different this game. In this game, white just crushed black throughout the entire game. and just managed to attack very nicely, using this pawn as a very good weapon to promote it. And there was really very little chances for black in this whole game, whereas in the last game, MrBeast had a lot of chances. So two very different games. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys let me know down below who you want to win the whole Pogchamps, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.